Okay, so this is just a quick second part here about the view of Confederation during this time and the anti-Confederation views. So there was a possible maritime union. So as you read in chapter one, maritime colonies were dealing with many challenges. Arthur Gordon, the lieutenant governor of New Brunswick, was concerned that a union of the province of Canada would destroy the maritime colonies' power and independence. So Gordon instead believed that a maritime union of New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island offered a solution to many of their challenges. A maritime union would also allow these colonies to pool their tax dollars to pay for much needed infrastructure, such as roads and railways. So, doing what Ontario and Quebec did, Canada East and Canada West, they formed their own province. They're saying, why don't we just form a union of all the Atlantic colonies? So in September 1864, leaders from New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI met to discuss the union of the three provinces at the Charlottetown Conference. You're going to learn more about that later in this chapter. So here is a sculpture of former Premier John Hamilton Gray of PEI speaking with former Premier John Hamilton Gray at the Charlottetown Conference. Both men had the same name but were not related, and they both went on to become fathers of Confederation. So why do you think this conversation was so important that it was commemorated as a sculpture 150 years later? Because if this discussion never happened, then Confederation would have never happened. So if we also look at the inclusion of the Northwest region, so I'm talking Rupert's Land, uh, that's current day Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and the Northern Territories. There, that land was owned by the Hudson Bay Company at the time, and they owned the rights to the fur trade in that region. But they were worried that they would sell it to the United States. So John A. Macdonald wanted to say, like, okay, personally, we need to take this piece of land because I'd be quite willing personally to leave that whole country a wilderness for the next half century. But I fear that if Englishmen do not do that, Yankees will. So that idea of manifest destiny of the United States. And then George Brown also said, if Canada acquires this territory, it will rise in a few years from a position of power to the greatest colony any country has ever possessed, able to take its place among the empires of the earth. So he has this really grand idea that we need to take this, we need to join these together, and we will form the greatest colony ever. The Pacific Coast, BC, British Columbia, during the time imposed a union on the colonies of Vancouver Island and British Columbia to help improve their money situation. However, the union lacked a government responsible to the people because it consisted of many appointed rather than elected officials. And appointed just means they've been picked, and elected is they were voted upon. So, with debt rising, British Columbia considered joining Confederation. However, there was a challenge that since the colony was cut off from the rest of the colonies, so that you have BC on the west coast and then Rupert's Land in between the rest of the other colonies, it was very difficult to form that sort of a union just because of geographic location. And then also, some people in the region supported annexation of the United States over Confederation. So now that we've heard all of the different views of Confederation, arguments against Confederation, I want you to think about this question. What were the main arguments against Confederation? Which colony had the most to gain from joining Confederation, and which colony had the most to lose? Okay, so those are our two main questions.